Good evening, everyone. My name is Regina Baird Haag, and I'm Executive Director at LCK Pal House. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be a part of this partnership that's sponsoring this event, as well as the other public ministry events that are coming up in the future. Pal House is located in Old Chatham, New York, on Mohican land, and we like to express gratitude and appreciation for their presence, both in the past and in the present. The spiritual foundation of Pal House is based on the sharing of radical welcome with anyone and everyone who visits our space. No matter where you come from, where you're going, who you are, what you believe, what you're looking for, you're welcome at Pal House. Welcoming opens both the givers and the receivers to being seen, accepted, and loved as an integral piece of the community that's built and lived into during the time that one spends on our 50+ acres. Pal House is a thin place where the separation between the present and eternity is permeable, almost negligible. Spirit is palpable and active in everything, in our programs, the beauty of this natural setting, and of course, among all those who were, are, and will be a part of this place. So please do visit our website at palhouse.org and check out and register for any of our upcoming programs, including the next public ministry episode, which will be on storytelling on May the 16th. And if you're so led, donations may be made on that website that support this program, along with everything else that Pal House does in this world. I want to turn this over to Rashid from FGC and ask him to share.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see your faces. My name is Rashid Darden, and I'm the Associate Secretary for Communications and Outreach of Friends General Conference. Friends General Conference, founded in 1900, is an association of local and regional Quaker organizations primarily in the United States and Canada and some portions of Mexico. We people, generally know what FGC is, but I like to introduce people to FGC's vision statement, which I don't think we share often enough. We envision a vital and growing religious society of friends, a faith that deepens spirituality, welcomes newcomers, builds supportive and inclusive community, and provides loving service and witness to the world. Through Friends General Conference, we see Quakers led by the Spirit joining together in ministry to offer services that help friends, meetings, and seekers explore, deepen, connect, serve, and witness within the context of our living faith. We have been working at FGC with Wendy since last fall on a series on our website about public ministry. And we are so grateful that Wendy has given so freely of her gifts so that FGC may engage in a year-long conversation with the community about the topic of public ministry. Now, selfishly, I wanted to get involved in this because it helps me in my role at FGC determine, well, are we going to start doing a public ministers directory again, or are we going to do something different? Are we going to change up what it could be? And these conversations help inform our future practice as FGC expands in connecting and communicating. And we hope to connect with you this summer at our gathering, which will be at Haverford University. Haverford College? I'm tripping. College? Okay.
College.
Ooh, thank you. I'm just upgrading everybody. Like people call me doctor sometimes. I'm like, please stop. No more school. We hope to see you at Gathering, which will be June 30th through July 6th, with some optional pre-gathering retreats if you're interested. Our website is fgcquaker.org. I'd love to see you there. I'd love to see you virtually. I'd love to see you around. But someone who I am delighted to share with you this evening is my co-conspirator, Wendy Cooler.
Thank you, Rashid. Thank you, Regina. I'm so happy to see all of you here. So my name is Wendy Cooler. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm not attached to any institution. I am the very thing we're talking about today, a public minister. My ministry is under the care of my meeting, Sandy Spring monthly meeting, which is in Baltimore yearly meeting. I see a number of friends from my meeting here today, so thank you. And I especially wanted to say thank you to Joan Liversidge, who is here. She has been, I don't know, such a encouragement and supporter to me since before I really knew I was a public minister. She told me, and then she told me what it was. And so today, I'm actually hoping that we can move the conversation about public ministry past telling each other what it is, and into new and braver territory. So for years, my ministry has been around the presence of interpersonal violence. And this has led me to be very curious about what it means to be in right relationship with each other. And this calling to increase connection between public ministers and Quaker traditions and increase understanding and support is very much in keeping with my calling towards right relationship. So with that said, I would like to ask Mary Linda McKinney to introduce herself. And then Rashid, if you could ask the next panelist to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Friends, I'm Mary Linda McKinney. I'm the creator and facilitator of the Faithful Meetings program for the School of the Spirit. Faithful Meetings brings opportunities for spiritual and emotional intimacy to Quaker communities. I'm also an interfaith spiritual director. I do some writing about spiritual matters, and I'm really glad to be with you here tonight.
Thank you, Mary Linda. Let's hear from Adria next.
Hi, friends. My name is Adria Gulizia. I'm a member of Chatham Summit meeting in Chatham. I can never remember if it's in Chatham or Summit, New Jersey. It's in one of the two. I'm a member of New York yearly meeting. The ministry that I have carried takes various forms. I am currently serving as clerk of ESR's Board of Advisors. I do religious ed in our meeting using the Living Our Faith curriculum, which is fantastic. If you're not using it for your first day of school, you should be. I have been known to write in Friends Journal, and I have a pamphlet that should be coming out in December through Pendle Hill on embracing spiritual gifts. And I am working on a class with School of the Spirit in collaboration with Johan Newroth on God's promise fulfilled. How can we live faithfully in a world that seems to be falling apart? So I am just thrilled to be here, and thank you, Wendy, for asking me.
Thank you, Adria. Judy, are you here? I know she was here a moment ago. While we're waiting for Judy, Phil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Phil Baisley. I teach pastoral ministry at our home School of Religion. I am a member of the new Association of Friends. Let's see, what meeting? West Elkton meeting. I pastor at Greenfield Friends. Long story. That's enough about me.
Thank you, Phil. I do not see Judy, so we're going to go on to
Here I
Harold. Oh, Harold, Judy, where are you?
Here I am. Hi, friends. I am in Kenya and it is 2 a.m., but I hope you can hear me, you can see me. Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy and Rashid and all friends. I am Pastor Judith Nandikove from Kenya. I am a pastor at Donholm Friends Church, a volunteer pastor at Donholm Friends Church, a traveling minister. Donholm Friends Church is in Nairobi, a meeting. A traveling minister, and I have traveled in quite many countries, just speaking about women, speaking to girls. And here back in Kenya, many times I have supported girls in making sanitary pads, reusable sanitary pads, and distributing them, combating domestic violence and gender-based violence. I am on Quaker Religious Education Collaborative Africa / International Steering Circle. I'm serving also on Quaker Spring organization, Friends, Peace Teams, writing stories with children, peace stories with children, and also right now serving on nomination committee of Friends, Peace Teams, Ugly. And I'm happy to be here. Happy to see you, friends. I think I have met quite some of you. I've been at Paul House, and I'm happy to be here virtually. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be with us today. Harold, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Harold Page-Jamison. I am a member of West Branch Meeting in West Branch, Iowa, part of Iowa Yearly Meeting Conservative. My relationship to Quakerism is mostly through some of its institutions. I was a student at Scattergood Friends School, and that's where I became introduced to Quakerism, really enjoyed collection. Worked at Baltimore Yearly Meeting summer camps, and just attended a lot of meetings since then, but did not become a member until recently in West Branch. My ministry is mostly about our testimony of that of God in everyone, and the statements or the ideas about equality that arise out of that, in contrast to how we actually treat each other, how our institutions treat our employees and workers, and the way that if you start really asking questions about classism and equality in our institutions, it gets very uncomfortable very fast. And that has been true in my own experience. I was ejected from my job for raising those questions. So I'm still on that journey and still figuring out where the Spirit is leading me next.
Thank you. Let's hear from Christy next.
Good evening, friends. My name is Christy Randazzo. I use they, them pronouns. I am located in Pennsauken, New Jersey on Lenape territory, right across the river from Philadelphia. And my ministry in Quakers at this moment is mainly as a theologian. I think I'm one of the few people who claim that I'm specifically and explicitly a Quaker theologian. The idea that Quakers have theology and that it needs to be developed and put in relationship and conversation with especially the rest of the wider Christian world is sometimes shocking for friends. And so I found that over many years of working in Quaker organizations, and I'm sure that my list is long, but not nearly as long as many of the esteemed friends here with us. I found that one of the major elements of our ministry is just to be present and to specifically say, that we do have theology and we do theology. I've written numerous books on the subject, and most recently I'm working on a project looking at eco-theology, Quaker theology, and I'm trying to put them in conversation through the lens of what's known as systematics. The big questions of theology: who is God, who is human, what is the creation, what have you. Most recently wrote a book with Charisse Bach. Y'all might know that amazing friend out in Oregon, where we looked at the metaphor of light and developed an eco-theology around that, sort of, started thinking of some questions about what that would look like. And with Charisse, I co-chair the Quaker Theological Discussion Group, where we have panels on Quaker theology once a year. And many of the people here on this have either presented or been at that, panel before, so you know what I speak. We're a community of folks, scholars and, non-scholars, I guess, but I feel like if you're interested in theology, you're inherently kind of a scholar, in my opinion, who meet once a year and discuss issues of, significance in Quaker theology. And I'm right now teaching some courses at ESR, but my main work is with Montclair State University, teaching religious studies to 18 and 19-year-olds. It's yeoman's work, and it's valuable and necessary. And I specifically put the DR in front of my name in here, knowing that it's sort of a Quaker no-no, but my this this Zoom thing is connected to all the other academic stuff I do. And I found that as a oftentimes visibly presenting queer and non-binary person, I have to make a point of claiming that I do have a sense of authority in that space, something that potentially many women on this call might know of what I speak. So that's me, and please send off to the next person.
Well, thank you, Dr. Christy Randazzo. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Katie Breslin. My pronouns are she, her. My membership is with West Richmond Friends Meeting, but I am currently living in Minneapolis, Minnesota with my wife and our cats and our dog, Rufus Bones. This is the only place where people really can appreciate that pun, Rufus Jones. I found my Quakers by working for the Friends Committee on National Legislation, helping build out their young adult program. And then the 2016 election happened, and I decided to run to seminary, like every normal person does. So I spent some time around Earlham and ESR, doing public ministry, meeting a lot of you cool people in various ways. But I hold some deep concerns. This is the first time in my life that I'm not affiliated within my Quaker life with a specific Quaker identity. I work on some boards. I do some stuff with Friends Journal, but for the first time, I get to be like my own. And I'm sharing some concerns. I'm working with Ashley with some public friends work. How do we support and make sure our public ministers are being supported as they're doing this ministry work? What are the concerns that they have? How are institutions supporting them? How are institutions doing? Those are some of my concerns. And then I hold a special concern for queer and LGBT folks across the spectrum, but specifically within Quaker communities. How are we elevating those stories and not just talking about how certain communities don't like queer people, and instead embracing the beautiful gifts that we have as a queer community. So that's really where my ministry is kind of going these days, but excited to be on this panel and having these conversations.
Thank you, Katie. Rob, we'd like to hear from you next.
Hello, welcome from Philadelphia. I am not a Quaker. I'm an attender of the, let me get it right, Queer Abolitionist Quaker Worship Group, fondly referred to as Quackwig. I feel like I am not a Quaker, and I have an intimate relationship with Quakers and Quaker communities, along with Lucy Duncan, who's also on this call. I'm the co-director of an organization called Reparation Works, and we work with white leaders, majority white organizations to do meaningful reparations. And as part of our organizational journey, especially in the front end, we spent a lot of time running cohorts and workshops and trainings on racial justice and reparations, but it really boils down to community and practical spirituality with some Quaker meetings. And presently, a lot of our work is focused on faith communities, congregations in Philadelphia that are interested in reparations. And there's a cohort of those folks who are working on reparations. And I believe there are 3 Quaker meetings that are active, really interesting part of that, who are doing some great work. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to say about this. I'm fascinated, and this is like coming to somebody else's house on Thanksgiving dinner. I'm learning a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, friends. I'm Ashley Wilcox, and it's good to see so many familiar faces. I am currently serving as the interim pastor of New Garden Friends Meeting in Greensboro, North Carolina. My ministry has gone in lots of different directions. I started out at Freedom Friends Church in Salem, Oregon, and was recorded by them in 2013 as a minister. I moved to Atlanta to go to seminary, and then here, and wrote a book called The Women's Lectionary. And things that are really on my heart right now in terms of ministry are supporting women and queer people, especially in the recording process. And I received a grant from the Louisville Institute this past year to work on that. And so I'm going to be writing a recording process that meetings can use. Because I hear there is a need for that, and I hope people will use it. And Wendy and Katie are helping out on that too. So good to see you all, and I look forward to tonight.
Thank you, Ashley. Lynette, we would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Rashid. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lynette Davis. I use she, her pronouns. Formally, I am Sister Lynette Davis. I am a member of Ujima Friends Meeting, and I'm also a vowed sister with the Sisters for Christian Community. To my knowledge, I am the first and only Quaker sister among other Catholic sisters. And so I suppose a part of my ministry is interspiritual bridge building. That came as an offshoot. It was not intentional, but that's the way the Spirit leads, and that's where I'm following. I am deeply concerned about the deep soul hurt of friends, seekers, and how that deep soul hurt is experienced in the world. Because of that concern, a lot of my ministry revolves around the work of transformative love, and that translates into a lot of study and writing around a love ethic, as well as holding space for grief and lament. And I do that as a spiritual director. And also I'm working on being able to hold that space in other capacities as I do more and more work around grief and lament. I am also a retreat leader and workshop facilitator, and I mainly work in suicide prevention and creating mental health literacy for the governments that be. I think that's all I'll share for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Lynette Davis. Jess, are you here? Johan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello from London, and where it's a little after midnight. So I have a vision that has guided me through a lot of my time working on friends organizations and also working in Russia, member of Camas Friends Church of Sierra Cascades yearly meeting and Moscow meeting. My vision is building a trustworthy church. Tonight, my special concentration will be listening carefully because I'm a member of the Nurture of Ministry Committee of our yearly meeting, which in other yearly meetings is sometimes called the Recording Committee, to nurture, encourage, record, and support people in public ministry. So that's what I'll be listening for clues for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here and to see so many familiar faces and some that are not. I'm Lucy Duncan. My pronouns are she and they, or they. I'm a member of Green Street Meeting, of Philadelphia yearly meeting, and I live in Philadelphia, land of the Lenape. With Rob, I was the co-founder and continue to be co-convener of the Queer Abolitionist Quaker Worship Group, which anybody's interested, let me know. I think that my ministry for the last probably 12 to 15 years has been focused on racial justice as a spiritual practice. And I think that I'm really deeply concerned with the practice of, with the understanding of liberating one's spiritual self from our socialized self. And a lot of the work that I do is really, really about that. And that work has moved me to, as Rob shared, towards reparations as a spiritual practice, reparations as an alchemical tool to heal us on the level of resources, relationship, and spirit. And that's, I founded a reparations committee at Green Street, which in 2021 budgeted $500,000 for reparations. And it's been amazing to watch that work really deepen and transform that community. And as Rob said, we are the co-directors of Reparation Works, which is focused on a campaign of the spiritual community to get 100 majority white congregations sincerely engaged in reparations. So far, we've got 15. And our mission is together we create a thriving, lush Philadelphia through the sacred power of reparations. I write about stuff. I've written some articles for Friends Journal, including reparations and transgenerational healing. And I'm also really interested in the role of people on the margins in transforming our religious society of friends, and how people who are Quaker adjacent and in other ways on the margins, Black friends, etc., see us in a different way that can deepen our faith and deepen us in our faithfulness. And I'm also really interested in marginal spaces and how those marginal spaces can be really lively, enlivened spaces. And as part of that concern, I helped to found the Coalition of Quakers Uprooting Racism, which is a community of practice explicitly centering people on the margins as a tool to transform the religious society. And it's great to be here.
Thank you, Lucy. It's great to have you. Lori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, hey, it's almost as if that's done on purpose. Fun fact, my daughter is named Lucy, and one of the reasons I chose Lucy for her name is because I knew Lucy Duncan peripherally and admired her work among friends. And that's a fact. So my name is Lori Pineiro Sinitsky. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a 52-year-old cisgender woman. I'm a single mother of 2 young adult children. I'm a member of Green Street Monthly Meeting in Philadelphia and Lenape, the land of the Lenape, in Philadelphia yearly meeting. My ministry is pretty pedestrian when I when I put it next to what I've heard tonight so far. And that's okay. My ministry as a low pay employee in Quaker orgs has been noticing, naming, and offering solutions to address systemic injustice in Quaker practice and in Quaker orgs. I am now a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator and intergroup dialogue facilitator at Villanova University, just outside of Philadelphia, which is a Catholic university. And I grew up in the Jewish tradition, and my mother's from Puerto Rico. And so I bring all of these perspectives to my spiritual life and to my ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, friend. Greg, are you here?
Yes, because sorry I'm late. I thought it started at 7:30 and so that is life. I'm Quaker, he, him. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota on the unceded Dakota land. I have been a professional and capacities. I've been working at a meeting, working at a Quaker college, working for nonprofits, and I am kind of a rebel Quaker, because at the use of underpaid and some abuse, I quit that professional life. I faced a lot of ableism from Quakers when speaking my truth. So I am interested in oppression and justice, and especially toward disability justice and the intersection that plays with race and disability, because of climate change affecting neighborhoods of color more and causing more disabilities among people of color. I am also concerned with how do we reach out to young adults, especially college age, and through this ministry, I've worked with college students at Quaker and non-Quaker colleges. I worked with people who also had the ministry or want to have the ministry. And lastly, I beg God to preach, and I found I had a passion for preaching in seminary. I went to Princeton Seminary, wanting to get out of the Quaker bubble, and I'm on the preaching team of a queer-led and BIPOC-led radical UMC Methodist church plant in my neighborhood in Minneapolis. Lastly, I do vocational discernment workshops with Beacon Hill, Fans House, and the executive director, Jen Newman. Jen and I have been doing this work for 4 years, really wanting to call to help people find their calling in life, whether or not it is paid work or what they do outside of paid work. And even though my interest came from wanting to help young adults, we are doing it. We have had done the workshops for ages 15 to 80. I will yeah, and I love being with you all tonight. And my pronouns are he, him. I think I forgot.
Thank you, Greg. I just want to do a last call in case Jess is in the room with us. Okay. I want to thank each of our panelists. Clearly, we have a huge amount of theological and cultural sort of life experience diversity in this space, as well as geographic diversity. Big shout out to Judy and Johan for being in very uncomfortable time zones right now and still joining us. So the way that we have created this evening's program, Rashid and I are going to take turns asking queries. We've decided ahead of time with these panelists. So we have 4 queries, and we have specific panelists that we are asking to kind of be a mini panel for us for 15 minutes each to respond to these queries. So the first thing I want to ask, and this is for Mary Linda, Adria, Judy, Phil, and Harold. I'd like you to consider how you understand the diversity of ministry and spiritual gifts among Quakers.
Wendy,
Yeah?
before we carry on, I just want to remind folks that fishbowl format means that our panelists will be talking to one another. So they will not necessarily be stopping for questions, but we hope that you enjoy their conversation with one another and are edified by it, and perhaps save your commentary for our breakout groups at the end of our time together.
Thank you, Rashid. I appreciate that. We've talked about it so many times now, I forget. So I'll repeat the query from Mary Linda, Adria, Judy, Phil, and Harold. How do you understand the diversity of ministry and spiritual gifts among Quakers?
I can start by saying that I've been giving a lot of thought in the last few months to the idea of spiritual gifts. And I've come to understand that spiritual gifts are not about skills or talents as much as they are about the energy that God wants to give us that work through us. So a person may have a talent or gift for a particular kind of ministry or a particular task that needs to be done. But if they don't have the energy for doing it, then they're not going to really, it's not a ministry. But a person may have no skills or abilities, but be given the leading to do something. And if they're willing, if they give themselves over to the divine, so the divine can work through them, I think God gives them the skills and talents and the people, the support, the knowledge that they need to do that work. So that's kind of where I am with the idea of gifts. Anyone can be given a leading, and it is on each of us to follow where God is guiding and be open and curious about what God is going to make available to do that work.
Well, I have to say that what Mary Linda just shared just resonates so strongly with my experience. So, there are different lenses on spiritual gifts, but I find the Ephesians 4 lens to be very compelling as far as helping me to understand how different friends might approach the same ministry or a similar leading differently. And in Ephesians 4, you have the apostolic gift, which is kind of like the launching of new ministries in response to the needs of the moment. You have the prophetic gift, being aligned with God's will and declaring it and living into it. It's a love of holiness and truth. The evangelistic gift, which is sharing the good news and inviting people into a close relationship with God. The shepherding gift, which is embodying that love through community, and the teaching gift, which is really clarifying truth in an edifying way and bringing people into a greater understanding of the world that God has given us and how it is ordered. And so that has been a lens that's helpful for me in helping to understand conflict, because sometimes these gifts come into tension with each other because none of us was made to understand in fullness what God is offering us and inviting us into. We need each other, and we need each other's insight and leadings and ministry to more fully understand. But when I did a spiritual gift inventory, so I started an interest in spiritual gifts in Friends of Jesus Fellowship. Hey, Christy, about 10 years ago. And I did a spiritual gift inventory, and the way it divided it was you had your top 5 potential active gifts. This was out of a list of 30, and your top 5 potential latent gifts. And the active gifts is like, what are you already doing to embody the kingdom of heaven? And the latent gifts is, what should you explore that God might be calling you into? And my number one latent spiritual gift was evangelism, which I found horrifying as a middle-class kid from the New Jersey suburbs. Evangelism was like tent revivals and people knocking on your door, and that kid in high school who asked me if Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior, to which it was like, well, how is that any of your business? And so it was just very like, no. And fast forward, I was at a conference from Monday through Wednesday, and a question came up when we were sharing our perspective. And I said, my faith is very important to me. Being a Quaker is very important to me. Following Christ is very important to me. And then I kind of led into my example, which was related, and had the people who came up to me afterwards and talked about how meaningful that was and shared their own testimonies was just mind-blowing. 10 years ago, I couldn't have done it. And so letting go of my image of myself and leaning into what God was inviting me into, even though it is always scary. And sometimes I'm like, well, you guys are going to think I'm ridiculous. But I guess here I am being a fool for Christ. So thank you for saying that it's not about the skills, Mary Linda. It's about the leading. It's about the calling.
Yeah, I want to say that spiritual gifts has been given to individuals in different ways and can be carried in different ways to different people. And especially when it comes to diversity, you find that you can have a gift, and I've experienced this as a traveling minister, whereby you go to different place, different culture, different environment, and you find that as you have this gift, you have to see how to carry it out depending on the culture, on the environment you are in, and the situation. Where exactly are you? Who are you ministering to? So to me, spiritual gifts have been given to us, and you have to discern, even as you go out as a public minister, God to lead you, the Spirit to lead you on how you are going to explore it, how you are going to minister, how you are going to share the gift. And I've been looking at diversity. I find that in Quaker ministry, we are Quakers, but we have a very huge diversity. And having traveled in most parts of Africa, United States, in various different meetings, going to UK in different Quaker meetings, Canada in different meetings, and all over the world, I have learned that we have that huge diversity, different cultures, different perspectives. And when you are carrying out the spiritual gifts as a minister, it needs a lot of care. It needs a lot of discernment. It needs I can say it needs Holy Spirit to guide and to lead you on how you are carrying these gifts, depending on where you are, with whom you are with, and the objective to be achieved at the moment. So I have learned that as ministers, as we share the spiritual gifts we have been given, we have to understand multicultural, we have to understand the diversity, we have to understand ourselves better, and be able to know who I am, where I am, what is my work in this space at this particular time. Thank you.
Bill or Harold, do you have things that you can add to this conversation?
I don't feel I can add anything to the conversation.
Well, it is a panel discussion, and so I'm going to discuss a little bit. I really appreciated, Judy, what you said about context and how that's important, understanding where you are and what you're doing. For me, that's a challenge sometimes because I am I like so much to be liked and appreciated, and it's really hard sometimes to give a hard message. And so that to me is the balance, is understanding the group and then also being willing to say, well, if I have to say something that is not going to be well received, that's a sacrifice that I need to be ready to give to God. But I have definitely gotten ministry in Meeting for Worship and been like, I think you have the wrong number, Holy Spirit. And I would recommend you try again and see if this message is for somebody else. So being willing to do that, wrestling, and then ultimately to offer the message, because the times when I haven't, it just feels so bad to not do it. But it's hard.
if you wouldn't mind me jumping into the fishbowl just for a minute. I had this visual of God on a rotary phone and then doing it a second time and reaching you the second time. Um, I'm wondering if the other panelists could also jump in there about the hard things, the hard ministry, the fear of losing potentially your social capital in your meetings. I I wonder what that feels like for all of you.
For me, it's about relationship, the primary relationship being between myself and the divine, and also myself and myself. I have to get my ego stuff out of the way, and I think that's what Judith was talking about. I have to identify all the blocks that I'm carrying and get them out of the way so that I can be present to what the Holy Spirit wants to come through me. If I don't do that, then it's my ego doing it, and that's not useful to anyone. Sometimes that's not possible, but I think it's our work to do as much as possible.
And I think of the query, just going to read it again because I find that helpful. How do I understand the diversity of ministry and spiritual gifts among Quakers? And thinking just of what Mary was saying about getting out of the way. The word diversity to me in this context asks me, how am I out of the way for other people? And what I love about Quaker meeting is the possibility that anybody could speak. I don't really think of it as having to do with Quakers in particular. Like, I think we can go through life thinking about how we can get out of the way for other people, how we can sort of unlock things. Or so the idea of gifts, there's a giver and a receiver, and I think ideally, like, there's nobody who owns it, right? Like the gift is not something that somebody owned and then gave to you and now you own it. It's more about like allowing things to be how they could be. So in a sort of practical sense, what that means for me in meeting is, if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, is there a message that I need to speak? I also need to ask, is there a message that I'm ready to hear, that if I'm not ready to hear it, somebody can't speak it because I didn't get out of the way for them to speak it?
Thank you, friends. We really appreciate this this opening volley, if you will. And I'm going to take over, and the next group of friends to respond to a query will be Christy, Katie, Rob, and Ashley. And that query is, how does public ministry disrupt the Quaker status quo? And why is this important? I've also put the query in the chat, and this will be once again for Christy, Katie, Rob, and Ashley.
So I can start. Christy, we're probably on the same page, which is that we have to define the status quo to answer the question. Yes. And so for Quakers in the US, and I'm going to say this group is probably mostly liberal friends, it's co-sponsored by FGC, that status quo is older and white and worshiping in silence primarily. And I have heard others say that our churches in North America are becoming social clubs for retirees. And I worry about that with friends, that we're just joining with like-minded people who look like us and act like us. And we get together for an hour of silence once a week, and that's about it. And I think ministry disrupts that status quo and should. It's really important because we do not worship the silence. We do not worship Quakerism. We do not worship any of those things. We're there to listen for the voice of God and do what God is telling us to do. And if we're not doing that, then we're not being faithful to what we're called to as friends. But so often we get into this, Quakers don't. Anytime there's a new ministry, anytime there's a suggestion of something different, it's Quakers don't do that, and a big discussion of what Quakers don't do. And I think we need to disrupt that. We need to worry about lagging behind our guide instead of outrunning it.
Thank you, Ashley. And I guess I've been thinking about this for most of the day, because Wendy sent these queries out earlier, and the whole time I'm cooking dinner going like, what am I going to say? And it just sort of struck me that the second part of the question, I think, is sort of really essential for framing the whole thing. You know, why is it important? And I'd say fundamentally it's important because it is, in many ways, one of the fundamental theological ideas that underlie Quakerism, this idea that God's always speaking. You know, you could call it continuing revelation, you could call it, you know, what have you, you know, but fundamentally, since the very beginning, you know, since, you know, George Fox and Pendle Hill, and then of course you got, you know, Margaret Fell, and you know, how she hears him in the middle of the sermon, and the whole thing, you know, it cut me to the core and all that. Like, fundamentally, Quakerism is about breaking the status quo. It's about cutting through. It's about listening to a God who speaks constantly and is constantly seeking to have us listen and adapt and react accordingly. And if we're not listening and we're not doing, you know, in some sense, responding, actually doing a thing to respond to that you know, that voice, that still small voice, that you know, that voice breaking into our reality, then what are we even here for? What's the point of what we're doing? You know, we're not Quaker anymore. We're something else. We're a meditation society. Because if we are listening to God, then fundamentally the status quo is going to change. It's going to require change. It's going to demand change of us. So, I mean, I would say that, you know, the importance is sort of the whole thing. You know, status quo, we can become and have become in many ways, a rather conservative tradition. You know, if you've ever tried to explain to somebody, you know, how Quakers teach, you know, when one should speak in meeting, it is astonishing how much you get this response of like, really? And you try to explain, there's like this one image of this famous wheel where like, you have this decision, then you have to make this decision, and you have to make like decisions before you decide whether it's okay for you to speak what you are certain God is calling you to speak. So we're so afraid, to a certain extent, almost of having the status quo being broken, that we've just channeled this ministry into this this very specific framing, that we actually oftentimes have entire meetings where somebody can speak of the number of messages that have been given in meeting in terms of like numbers per month as opposed to numbers per week, which, again, I don't know God's entire inner life, but I feel like God is likely speaking far more regularly than that, regardless of our numbers. So I think that, if we think about like public ministry being this representation of like maybe Quakers who are, what public Quaker means to me is the fact that I make a point of saying I'm a Quaker theologian. I make this, this insistent sort of claim that I am this tradition. I come from this space, and I'm doing so in a public facing way in other settings as well. I'm not just Quaker on Sunday or amongst you absolutely lovely people. I'm Quaker all the time. And again, one would say that is fundamentally what we're supposed to be as Quakers. That Quaker testimony from the very beginning was just the testimony of you being Quaker in the world, through your actions, through who you were. It's almost like a Wi-Fi signal that just sort of kept sending off from you these signals that people could see and experience you and learn who you were and learn who you were about, following the voice of God, through your actions, through how you lived in the world. So, I mean, I might sort of maybe return and say, Quakers are kind of all called to be public ministers. And those of us who claim a public ministry, we should be sort of, filled to the brim with other people who are doing the same. But I'm going to shut up now.
Thanks, Dr. Christy. Ashley, no, sorry, Katie. I just want to make time for everybody, but I want to say something that is kind of in response to Dr. Christy, and it is going to be glib, but I think it must be said. I think that God speaks a lot at our meetings if one thinks that God is National Public Radio. So I'm going to leave it there, but I want to hear what Katie has to say next, and I really want to hear what Rob has to say next as Quaker adjacent.
And Rob, if you feel called, go for it.
Okay. Preamble, disclaimer, I picked up terminology and some Quaker theology, but I'm sure I'm going to botch things. So the question, how does public ministry disrupt the status quo, is a question from the inside. I'm just minding my own business, and some people have come to me and Lucy and said, we've got a spiritual opportunity and problem that we'd like to chew on. And for me, I'm both collaborating and in some previous configurations of work. It's work, so I'm getting paid to do it. So for me, it's just, this is a great set of people to work with. It's a robust community. From your side, I'm a hireling priest, and it's not comfy. It's not comfy to be engaged that way. So I don't know what it's like to be on the inside and try to support yourself as a public minister, but I can tell you from the outside, I've had experiences that are just, I've worked in the corporate world, just horribly humiliating and brutal and relentless, to get to the point where, help me help you. Happy customers took years off my life. So that's one rant. Disrupting the status quo. I don't know. people have alluded to this in public ministry. I guess in my experience, I've been hanging a lot out with a lot of rebel Quaker malcontents who my non-Quaker layperson's perspective are glow bright with the light. Like they're actually doing the stuff. So I think public ministers on the inside and people you bring in from the outside, delivering hard messages, holding a container for people really engaging each other rigorously, goes against like the nicey nice middle-class suburban politeness. And I'm typifying it. I don't even know what it's like on your side, like where the cultural norms live and how you think about them. But people holding each other accountable and telling the truth. It's amazing the people's deep relationships, love, have taken care of each other on all sorts of different levels for decades, can't hold each other accountable when we start talking about race and structural systemic stuff. I don't know if I'm still answering the question. I'm getting all my Quaker consultant yayas out.
You are, Rob, but I do want to take it over to Katie.
Sure.
While saying, you are typifying it, but it's typical for a reason. People of similar social classes, of educational experience have typical experiences in this country. Katie?
Yeah. And yeah, all of what has been said has resonated with me deeply. And I've been thinking about this like idea of gifts and spiritual gifts and public friend, what makes a public friend. Every human being, every being on this planet has a gift, right? I don't think everyone, thankfully, has a public leading. And for friends in our communities that do have those public leadings, I think there is a common misconception that we see those as individualistic leadings. We see them as like, oh, this person thinks they're being special by doing this. And in my experience, it can be a beautiful blessing and it could be a terrible curse. And it can come at deep personal costs. Like we're talking about lost jobs, talking about not having weddings, we're talking about missing funerals, we're talking about like deep costs to health. Like I think it's, all of these things. So this is not something that someone takes on lightly. And when they come to us in our communities and they say, I've been really grappling with this, I've been really struggling with this thing, and I really need you to help me. I think that sometimes public ministers get, well, why are you special? Like, what is your, why are you doing this? And I just wish that instead of doing that, that we were able to frame this as a exciting opportunity to be in ministry with one another, because that is what a public leading really is. It is a communal like opportunity for a being in your community to represent this beautiful leading that you get to accompany. And I think about this all the time because my mentor, a mentor to many on this call, Eden Grace, I was on a clearness committee. She did a clearness committee for me in my meeting, and she was on it, and I was like discerning whether or not I wanted to do preaching coaching with Ashley, which like thank God we did that. It was for a Lyman grant, and I was like, it was to discern a gift on preaching. And I was like, I don't want to ask you for help. Like, I'm gonna have to like ask you to like help me introduce to these people. Like, and she just looked at me and she said, but this is the sweet sauce. Right. And that to me, like, if we embrace that when we're talking to people, instead of being like, oh, like, this is such an inconvenience. Like, no, like, this is great. Like, what a great way to spend a Thursday talking about all the amazing things that are happening. And I hope that we can do that. And I think that if we did that more people would want to be around us instead of being like, well, now I have to bring it to this committee, So yeah, that's what I have to say about this.
So, Katie, do you think that the status quo is the negative reaction, the status quo?
Yeah, like what a bummer religion, man. Like I truly, and I think it's like, and I love you all, and there are so many places that I've had like great beautiful moments of joy. And then sometimes you go to someone, you're like, I want to get married. And someone like bashes you in the face, right? And you're like, what? Like, we could have this like fun thing. We could be part of this like beautiful community. And yet like, we're like talking about logistics of like, someone said something like 100 years ago. Like, what are we talking about? Like, God is clearly leading here. You can see it vibrating out of the room. Why are we squashing this with process? Like, come on. Like, anyways, yeah. So the disrupting the status quo is maybe embracing and being a little okay with some mess and recognizing that like maybe God is leading us and we should follow that. I don't know. So be more cheerful. Oh, not like more cheerful in like a gross way. Like we talked about that in Friends.
Yeah.
Read that article, but like be excited. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Someone will wordsmith this later.
Thank you,
Friends, I
Katie.
know I'm not one of the recognized among you, but quite frankly, part of our job is to be Ducalaps for a constipated community.
Thank you, Leslie. So Katie, I just want to say, oh my gosh, what you just said is so speaking to my experience in public ministry. It is the most rewarding and most painful thing I think I've ever done in my life. I feel very much called by God, called by the divine inside of me to keep going. But it has been exhausting and it has been very expensive in many ways. It's been financially expensive, it's been spiritually expensive, it's been socially expensive, and it's also been expansive. Similarly, I can't say that I have any regrets, but I do have a lot of frustrations. That actually leads us very well into the next question, which is, what would the ideal educational, financial, or spiritual support systems look like for you? And this question is for Lynette and Johan. We're missing some panelists, and I feel like this is a question that many of our panelists probably have feelings about. So I'd like to prioritize the voices of Lynette and Johan, but I'd also invite responses from our other panelists today. And again, that is, what would the ideal educational, financial, or spiritual support systems look like for you?
I'll jump in if that's all right. I'll try to answer this very practically. One of the ways that I feel is lackluster within Quaker community, within all three possibly, is that support seems to be dished out to people who are already aware of the resources available. If someone is new to Quakerism, if someone is of a marginalized background, meaning not only are they possibly BIPOC or QT, BIPOC, or just LGBTQIA plus, period, they do not have access to the same resources and the same knowledge base as the majority of a meeting. And the majority of a meeting is typically white, middle to upper class and educated. So with that being said, when there are educational opportunities, one of the first things someone from a marginalized community, and I'll speak for myself, will notice is that the educators do not look like them. They do not have the same experiences because of the socioeconomic disparity, and therefore cannot always relate to the content in the source material that's being taught. The reason why that sometimes is an issue is because when we are then invited to a table, we're not being invited to a table for who we really are, but to be a Black face or a caricature to a table, to regurgitate the information that's already available And that's not true diversity. That's just basically having a face. So I'll say that. And financially, just as I was sitting here listening to some of the things that people were bringing up about the grant opportunities that they have most likely fought for. But I want to point out that I think that it's beautiful that you even knew about the grants in the first place, and that someone from a marginalized position may not know about the different Quaker opportunities, and that's because they're not shared. Just like when you're in a meeting, and this goes to answer the spiritual side, the only time that you understand what it means to be a Quaker in the meeting is when you're chastised or eldered. And so I'll start with that. I don't want to get too long-winded because I want to be respectful of everybody else's time and their opinion.
I want to frame this with my concern for building the trustworthy church. And to me, a trustworthy church in Quaker terms is a church where the leadership, the visible leadership, knows or is reminded by the rebels that our single most important query that faces any business meeting is, what does God want to say or do through us in this time and place? And if that spirit prevails, whether through custom or through conflict, then people need to also be aware that the rawness of their leadings need to be welcomed. People can operate from passion, from ecstasy. They don't have to speak like a tape recording. And I want to give a case study of when the meeting that I was part of in Richmond, Indiana, First Friends, was faced with the question by the tax refusers in the meeting as to whether the meeting would take the tax refusers, people refusing to pay the military part of their taxes, would take them into their care and exercise discipline or accountability for them while approving of this witness. And First Friends was not a meeting that you would predict would be supportive of that, but the spirit of asking what God wants us to say and do in this time and place was present. And so the meeting did agree that not only would they support publicly the position of people refusing to pay their military taxes, but also would replace income or property that might be confiscated by the Internal Revenue Service, by the tax authorities. So, but the person who brought this concern to the monthly meeting, the main discernment group, said not, this is in accord with such and such a tradition. He said, I feel like I would be strangled spiritually if I handed this money over. And there was room in that space. There was accommodation for that testimony and the emotion of it. And likewise, in our current yearly meeting, Sierra Cascades yearly meeting, we also center this question of what does God want to say and do through this time and place. And because of that, when the proposal came to fund Alaska Native Institution for culturally appropriate treatment of addictions came before us, our tiny little yearly meeting decided to put $75,000 investment into this. because we realized that a lot of our legacy money was either stolen land or stolen labor. And that's how it came to us. So we were able to exercise a discernment that this money was in fact to be transferred in this way, because not because it looked sensible on paper, but because this was what God wanted us to do in this time and place. So trustworthiness, transparency, giving the decision over to a discernment group that was operating in public is crucial. And if that's not what's happening, I hope someone is emboldened to say that's what should happen.
And I'm just going to piggyback on that and jump in and say, I think sometimes we think we're doing discernment, but we ask the question, what would God have us do? And we don't say the precondition, which is, what would God have us do without disrupting the way we're currently do things? What would God have us do within the confines of my personal, the conversations I've had with my financial planner, my dreams for my children, my plans for retirement, my career path. And so what that does is it creates cabins and limits before we even ask the question, because we've all agreed without saying a word that, well, to not be open to imagining that God might be leading us into something that looks different from what we've seen before. And so I love what Johanna shared about just doing something different, because I think so often we're so accustomed. This is how I'm working with Joanne and School of the Spirit on embodying and encountering grace in the shadow of empire. Empire has so conditioned our imaginations. It has so limited our spirits and boxed us in. It has so constrained our vision of the possible that even when we ask the question, what would God have us do? We're not prepared to see the answer because we can't recognize it as a real possibility. And so I just want to lift that up and thank you for sharing that experience, Johan.
And I want to kind of piggyback off of what you just said, Adria. I think that sometimes the solution that has been really prevalent in meetings is going, we'll get more creative if we get younger people. We'll get more creative if we have more diversity. And yet, to what my point was earlier, is that you want the people at the table, but you don't actually want to change the table, and you don't want them to actually contribute to that table outside of what you're already used to.
I want to speak to something very practical, which is that a lot of yearly meetings in Quaker organizations do not pay speakers. And especially right now, folks want speakers of color or younger people or people who are diverse in different ways. And they're like, oh, but we pay travel costs. Like, you're essentially saying, we will pay you to get here and do a whole bunch of work for us for free. And so I would encourage you to find out if your yearly meeting pays speakers and how much that is.
I want to go ahead.
In order to be clear, I'm not going to censor myself. Every once in a while, I think about Quakers as being fundamentally, radically accommodationist, which is like a nasty way of saying what you were just saying. Within the frame, you'll rip things up, but you're not going to operate in a different frame. And my understanding of this, Lucy and I fell into a thing where we ended up doing a lot of research on Benjamin Lay, and I've heard some things about George Fox, and none of this is new. You know, the original Quakers were like running around ripping stuff up, totally chaotic, and the polarity between spiritual leading and having an institution and caring and feeding for that has always been there. So none of this is new.
I wanted to contribute to this. What will the ideal educational, financial, or spiritual support system look like for you? And I am looking at this question and I relate it with the ministry I've been doing, relating to what Quakers are doing to public ministers. And I want to give it in two ways, one in African perspective and another one as a public minister all over the world. And when I come to African perspective, many times when you are a public minister, and especially coming up with the idea, okay, I have been given this opportunity, I can hear God is speaking to me for me to do ABCD. Many times people look at you like, oh, so this is your thing? Oh, you have come up with this? It takes time for somebody to understand how God is sending you, how God is guiding you, how God is leading you. And many times you find you have a lot of limitations in terms of finances and spiritual support. Like, oh, this is your thing. And I think because you came up with a thing, you have to fix it yourself. Before they come in, before they understand it, before they embrace it, it takes a lot of time to know that, okay, God has sent you, God has given you this gift, and God wants to use you. It takes a lot, it can take even years and years before it is being impressed. It is your thing from the word go. And you find you keep on moving, losing balance, not knowing exactly where God is leading you. And unless you are really, really eager to move on, you are really prayerful and you are steady, you find that you might give up in doing the ministry. As I've been traveling, many times you find, I think one of us shared earlier, there are these grants that are being given, there are support that is being given to Quakers, but many times you are limited again to who is supposed to be given. Do you belong to this group of people? And you find that you can be falling in the same category of the list of the requirements, but it comes like, okay, now you are not, like, if I may quote, you are not an American citizen, you are not coming from this place, you are not one of us, we don't understand you, we don't know you, but we want your ministry. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what God is speaking to you. So you find that there are a lot of limitations and lack of spiritual support. And many times it has been like asking questions, am I really called? And if I am called, where am I called to serve? Am I really called? And if I am called, who am I supposed to speak to? Before you get that space and you are being accepted fully in the community, especially of Quakers, it takes a lot of queries, a lot of anxieties, and a lot of like, oh, who are you? Can you explain to me again and again for me to be able to understand? Of which you find that many times it is demoralizing. It is energy, it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time. So to me, this is a very, very important question, and it has played a very big role or huge role in the public ministers space. And many times we keep on guessing, we keep on just looking at ways we can give out our spiritual gifts, our ministry, but we are so limited because of so many things around us. Thank you.
And thank you for carrying us through that query. We have a fourth query this evening that will be geared towards Lori, Lucy, and Greg. And that query, which I've just put in the chat, is, what do you see as the role of Quaker institutions in creating support systems for ministers? And you are free to interpret Quaker institutions as specifically as you need to, be they service organizations, be they yearly meetings, be they academic institutions. And if you need to name check FGC, I'm here for it.
It's very interesting. I'd like to open this. That's all right. It's interesting because in thinking about this, I was thinking about what was the support that was most important to me when I have taken the risks of faith. And I didn't think of institutions, except for my Quaker meeting. I thought about communities that gathered. And I mean, as probably many of you know, I was kicked out of an organization that was my vocational home for 10 years. After discerning a very clear call to speak. And I think that one of the things I think it's really important to understand is, like, I even felt self-conscious when I spoke about my ministry, because it's something coming through us, just as vocal ministry comes through us. We're trying to be a faithful channel and an instrument of something much deeper and bigger than us. And I think that, you know, when folks do things that are surprising or that push against the institution, the way that Adria was speaking about, I think that the response is so often reactive and shutting down instead of expansive and like, what is this? Why is this person taking this risk? And what is God trying to do through them? And I think that when I was kicked out of the organization, the support that I received practical financial support from my meeting, but one of the places that was the most supportive was actually the Neonu Span and the Beyond Diversity 101 community, because Neonu said, come and ask for whatever you need. And I went to BD 101 3 times, and it was a container in which I remembered who I was, because I didn't just lose, you know, a job. I also lost community, and I lost a sense of something that was, for those 10 years, a really deep leading for myself. And so I think that creating nets of support, that when people take the risks of faith and put themselves on the line in order to do something that puts them in harm's way, that we are a net for them, that we create nets. And I don't know that institutions are going to do that. Actually, I think that, you know, mutual care and Quaker meetings can serve that role. The Queer Abolitionist Quaker Worship, and Rob and I created a business in that moment. And I think that was a really huge weaving of support. But I think that when, you know, whether, like, Benjamin Lay kept getting thrown out, right? And he was faithful despite it, and he transformed Quakers' perceptions of slavery more than anybody else, more than John Woolman, by taking the disruptive actions that he did. And so why can't we get more curious? Oh, this person is taking a deep risk, and move in to accompany folks, move in to stand with them, move in to offer mutual care and hold them and understand, try to understand the God, that what God is trying to say through them, instead of shutting them down, pushing them out, using our rule-based stuff to diminish our understanding of who they are and what might be coming through them. So that would be one thing I say. And the other thing I would say is that Quakers are a lot better at shutting down our prophets than at holding our bullies accountable. And I think that the bullies are often like in positions of power, holding power, and I've seen this time and time again, in which nobody is willing to hold a bully accountable, and they shape space, they shape meetings, they shape discourse in the Quaker world. And some of these bullies are misogynist and abusive, and we do not hold them accountable. So I think a really good way to support vital ministry is for us to begin to hold people who are deeply abusive and in our communities accountable, and to stop being like it's weird, it's bizarre when somebody offers a prophetic ministry, we shut them down really fast. But when somebody repeatedly bullies other people, we're like, oh, we can't do anything about it. And I think that that's a really dangerous, like a dangerous and really problematic pattern in the religious society. That's what I got.
I really unite with everything that Lucy said. As a long time worker in Quaker organizations, and the irony of Quaker institutions is that they employ, their employees are ministers. Like those of you who have worked for Quaker orgs are there because you have a ministry, you bring your gifts and your talents and your passion to the Quaker org. The Quaker org benefits from that. You bring life and vitality, you create community, and yet you are subject to, I think bullying is the right word, the bullying when your ministry leads you to notice oppressive systems, actions, behaviors, or individuals in the institution. And so there's this weird contradiction about the existence of Quaker orgs and attitudes in liberal Quakerism about hireling ministers. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of harm done to people who've worked for Quaker orgs. I just hear stories of harm over and over and over again. And that same pattern of, well, gee, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, it is Quaker assimilation and alignment with white supremacy culture in the United States, I think, that has created a culture of scarcity thinking. And I would love to see us come up with other ways to describe this. Fear of anything that's not the status quo. When we do weird things, like we hold up George Fox as a prophetic founder of our faith, who went around, you know, making Bibles bleed and disrupting church services, and then we elder people who show up in meeting for worship with a kind of ministry that doesn't sound like NPR. And I just want to note that Rashid's observation earlier really set me on fire. Like, I heard friends talking passionately about listening to God and being a conduit for God, that is the role of a minister. And yet I hear lots of friends express the need to be very quiet about, or very skeptical about, the existence of the divine. And that worries me. I heard Dr. Christy say it before. Why the hell are we here?
Thank you, Lori and Lucy. As someone who I've been chewed up and spit out by Quaker institutions, I want to vote raised up. We hold up George Fox as a visionary, as the founder. He was a young cadet. He was about 24 when he first started in ministry, and 26 or 28 when he had the vision of a great people gathered. But if you apply for a job at 28 to lead most Quaker organization, you are told you don't have experience. I finally left because I was sick of getting passed over for higher jobs for different reasons, and being put in situations under managers who couldn't ever figure out how to give me 2 days off in a row, or give me a livable wage, and not make me feel guilty that I am asking for ways to support my family in the capitalist society. Yeah, I would like to live in a tent and give all myself, but I got a daughter who likes something to wear, and she likes Minecraft. Those things cost money. We expect our ministers to be prophetic and shut them down when they have a grievance. Some of our smaller nonprofits and meetings have ill-equipped HRs, people who emotional abuse, and people who love to lob Molotov cocktails at people in power. We are realizing that they are people with souls who might have done real harm, but they are still human. They still have families at home. And we need to pay people better. We need to pay interns. We need to pay people. We need to support them. We need to see our gifts. See ministry as ways to enliven and to grow. Not just the minister, but open ourselves to new possibilities and new roles. So many times I've been told to stay in my own lane by organizations and by constituents. That's why I got myself a woke minister, because no meeting endorses me. No meeting some meetings haven't given me a support committee, but I've been grateful, but for the most part, I know I have a gift, and I tried to run away, and I kept getting caught back. And I finally ran away. I found a new home for my spiritual life that is life-giving. And it doesn't have Quaker in the name, but it has Quaker at its essence. And so many times that I speaking to a room of ministers, I happen to name it, we eat each other up. We have been our harshest critics. We have silenced each other. We have tried to one up each other. We have tried to play the game of who is the better fucking Quaker. Who is better? Who is doing it better? What meeting is doing it better? But better is it what we are being called to? How do we call each other to faithfulness? To be able to bear our wounds and bear witness to where we have failed. We have all failed. We need to fail to grow. But so many times I've seen the people want to cover up our failures. I have become a full partner in my church. And I say right person, to become a full partner, one thing you have to do is a act of racism embodied coach. People can ask me later to explain it was life changing, but how do we embodied our life together, embodied that like we are traveling on similar paths? How do we embody that one of us may get farther on the path, and instead of being like shaming others for not being further on the path, how do we set the table? We build people water containers, prepare the banquet, so that when others get there, they aren't there to be shamed, but they are there to be at the table to eat and share the body and the blood. That's what we need. As ministers, we need to stop eating ourselves whole and start being dishonest about our feelings. We are there. We are like human. But so many times our meetings want us to our organization want us to be superhuman, and when we act like that, we are being true to God. Like, I would have hated George Fox and Benjamin Lay. Like, to be honest, he probably would have kidnapped my daughter. Let's be honest. Like, we aren't all John Woman or Benjamin Lay or George Fox. Maybe some of us are, but like, they were also dicks at times. I don't know about John Woman, but George Fox, like, as someone who liked to preach, he probably would have interrupted my church service. So like, yeah, let's get real. Let's be honest. We are build humans. Let's stop hiding it. Let's start by saying sorry. Let's start treating each other like the build human beings we are. And once we live into that, there isn't a call to original sin crap. Like that a theology debate that I don't care about. There is just like being human, like letting us fail, because when we let ourselves fail, we try new and cool fucking things. And that can't happen if we are so scared of fucking up. So let's fuck up, and if we do it really fucking badly, listen to each other, listen to our elders. We need a good elderly. That I think baby boomers build my generation with lack of elderly, but that is another conversation too. But yeah, time for some humility. Time to get off the soapbox and do our ministry on that deep sacred seed that we need to water. But sometimes that water doesn't come from just us, it comes from a community as a boat.
Thank you, Greg, for that prophetic message. That could be the tagline of this event. Let's fuck up. I am aware of where we are in the hour, but given that we just received that prophetic message and other prophetic messages this evening, I'd like to call us into a few minutes of waiting worship. And then I will propose that those of us who need to leave at the hour be invited to do so with our blessings. And those of us that would like to stay for an extended conversation about what we heard here tonight are also welcome to do that. So friends, Rashid and Regina and I would like to invite you to stay another 15 minutes if that is how you are called and able. If not, I would welcome your goodbyes right now. All right. So friends, Regina has prepared some breakout rooms for us, which are probably inaccurate now. Regina, do you need to take another minute to set up new breakout rooms?
2 seconds, please.
Okay. So the idea behind these breakout rooms is that there will be 2 presenters, if possible, that are serving as facilitators in each space. And we have a query. How are you called to support public ministry? Actually, do you mind putting that in the chat, Rashid? I have a hard time doing 2 things at the same time. This is your time to share your experiences of ministry as a minister, as we all are in the Religious Society of Friends, and as someone who is maybe especially interested in the questions we talked about this evening around public ministry. I'm going to ask that the facilitators of each group take notes of what is generated in these spaces, because this time will not be recorded. And we will use those notes as part of the report back from this event. At 9:10, we'll call you back into this space so that we can debrief what was heard in the breakout groups and then say our good nights. Does this sound okay to everyone? All right. Thank you. So Regina, when you're ready, if you'd like to put people in breakout rooms.
Good luck, everybody.